Hi everyone, my name is Josephine Olson. I'm a senior at Boston University. I'm majoring in American Studies and minoring in Deaf Studies or American Sign Language. I'm also on the Division I rowing team at BU, and I was diagnosed with a learning disability in first grade, and so I've had an IEP and 504 plan since first grade, and I'm dyslexic with a working memory deficiency. So my advocacy for students with learning disabilities honestly didn't really start until recently. When I was younger, I always kind of hid the fact that I had a learning disability. I didn't really want other people to know. There's a huge stigma that students with learning disabilities aren't as smart or that they can't do the work. And so I really hid it, and it wasn't until kind of the end of high school, beginning of college, that I realized that my learning disability is a big part of my identity, and I don't need to overcome my learning disability in order to be successful in life. So teachers and parents can definitely help be allies for students with learning disabilities by making sure that they're getting the right accommodations and realizing that if a student is doing well and succeeding in the classroom, that doesn't mean that their learning disability is cured in any way. This is a lifelong way that their brains are always going to process information differently. And if you see a student succeeding in the classroom, that means that their accommodations are working. That means that they are currently able to show their knowledge of the material in the classroom, and that they should continue to receive those accommodations. So I felt supported by a lot of teachers and the school systems when they really listen to what I have to say. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that your accommodations should change based on what style of classroom that you're in and the teaching style. And so it's really important to have that open line of communication and really have a close connection between the student and the teachers and parents in this situation, because what a student might need in one classroom is going to look completely different in their history or math classroom. They might need a printed out slides for note taking in one classroom, but in a different classroom they might need access to a computer to type their notes. And so the most important thing is that you're really talking with the student and figuring out what's working and what doesn't, and what allows the student to really show what they've learned and excel in the classroom just like you'd want for any other student. So I have a couple advocacy issues that are really close to my heart. My first one is definitely that your learning disability does not affect your intelligence. I think that's a huge stigma of why people kind of don't always want to associate themselves as being part of the disability community. Because as soon as you say that you have a learning disability, a lot of times people have a lower expectation for you. They don't think you can go as far, and they don't think you're going to be as qualified or educated or smart. And that's not true. All that means is that your brain might process information differently, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your intelligence. And so I think it's very important that people have role models in the learning disability community, and so that they can see that just because you have a learning disability doesn't mean you can't excel to anything you can dream of. And the other important advocacy issue that's very close to my heart is getting accommodations in college. So parents and the PTA and teachers can really help students transition from after high school to college or career after that by really laying the foundation of helping them learn self-advocacy skills, because that becomes increasingly important as you get older, to be able to advocate for accommodations that you might need or different styles of communication that you might be requesting. And the other big thing is that special education teachers or the PTA and parents in general can help students find out information on how their students can get accommodations in college, and doing some research and realizing that some of the accommodations in high school and college are going to change and that colleges offer different accommodations. So doing research into the different accommodations that might benefit that student that maybe they've never thought that they've needed before. It's super important to get in touch with those college offices early and talk with them and get into communication with them and realize if they do need updated testing, try to get it done in high school so that the school pays for it. Because if you do not get tested in high school, most colleges won't give you accommodations unless if you pay thousands of dollars for an evaluation yourself. And unfortunately, I did not know my rights in high school and I had to pay for my new evaluation before college, and that's not right. So it's super important if PTAs and teachers can help students make sure that they're getting evaluated before college and making sure that they are doing the research and realizing all the different accommodations that are offered in college, because sometimes those do change. So one way that the PTA can really help students with learning disabilities and their parents is helping combine information and sharing it. There is a lot of resources online. For example, the National Center for Learning Disabilities or Smart Kids with Learning Disabilities has a lot of online resources about new technologies. For example, there are different fonts that you can use. I always use Open Dyslexic when I type any of my papers, and then I transition it back to Times New Roman before I submit them. And there's an endless list of accommodations and a lot of free technology that's out there to support people and information on what it's like for your brain if you have a certain disability. And so I think the most important thing for the PTA to help parents do is help them learn what their child is going through and different ways that they can support them at home and prepare them to go to school the next day. When my older sister had like a learning disability, for a long time no one said the word, oh, she's dyslexic, and how important that really is by labeling the learning disability, because that allows parents to research and figure out how to best support their child if they have a label and a name. And it also helps the student identify that I'm not just struggling because I'm not smart. I'm struggling because my brain thinks in this certain way and I need to teach it in that certain way. And so having that label and realizing, okay, this is what I have, this is why my brain processes information this way, is super important. And a lot of times we kind of dance around it. We say someone has a learning difficulty or they're just not a strong reader, and that's not true. I think it's super important to have the label and realize, okay, this is what my brain has, but that's not the end of it. It's super important for everyone to prioritize helping students with learning disabilities, because a lot of the things that help students with learning disabilities actually helps every student in the classroom. So if teachers allow multiple different formats for evaluations, for example, they could offer a final that students could choose between writing an essay, filming a video, coming up with a creative project. If we can have different methods of teaching and students with different learning styles, it allows every student to succeed. And I think that's a main reason why we should focus a lot on students that learn differently, since it's going to ultimately improve the classroom for every student around and increase their knowledge of their peers and empathy of understanding that everyone's different, but that's okay. And that allows our society to thrive if we all have different minds.